Drones, phones, and screens. It's the largest tech trade show of the year, and CES 2017 is full of surprises.
On this week's edition of Hacking TV, we'll preview the gadgets and the hype.
Then Twitter, back from the dead, and focused on, wait for it, video.
We'll take a peek at China's new video plans.
And finally, a quick trip to Norway and a new way to create appointment TV.
I'm Saul Hansel. It's a busy week.
I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and this is Hacking TV.
Hacking TV. It's a busy first week of the new year, is what I was saying, and it is, in fact. Happy New Year, Steve.
Indeed. Ready? 17. Oh, boy, that's a little painful to say, isn't it?
Because we loved 2016 so much.
You know, I got to be honest, the first half of 2016 I was pretty good with. It was kind of a rockin' good time. It was that second half starting around, say, November. But in any case, we're gonna talk tech because we got plenty to talk about. CES. So, have you been to said trade show?
I have. It is one of my least favorite things in the world, but it's interesting in the sense that, you know, being caught on, you know, hundreds of lines that are 2 hours long each can be interesting.
I'm going to say this to our listeners. Friends of mine, if you're going for the first time, I only have one thing to say. You heard it from me. You're going to thank me for it. Sensible shoes.
I mean, when you have 100,000 people plus and all this stuff, it's really hundreds of stories. I mean, there's a whole trade show of just like cell phone cases and batteries, and there are, you know, all sorts of deals up in suites that you never see, and there's, you know, a lot of tradition around things that nobody really cares about, like television sets. Like, when was the last time somebody invited you to their house and showed you their gleaming new 77-inch Ultra something? I mean, yes, they keep getting sold, but...
So for me, CES, the last time that I cared about television sets, which is now, I guess, 5 years ago, CES got me excited enough to go home and buy a 3D television, which has never been used, not even once. I mean,
so you just have in your New York apartment, there is a large box sitting there that says Samsung.
It's used as a flat screen. It's a Samsung,
right,
and it's a lovely flat screen. But the 3D glasses and the 3D gizmo that they convinced me to be excited about, zero interest.
Okay. Meanwhile, stuffing stuff into specs that people may or may not notice. So Ultra HD is now standard. I'm not sure anybody notices or cares, but why not have more dots? We're all used to that, and if it gets cheap enough, you just buy it.
OLED, Ultra, whatever. I mean, yeah. Now, I do have to say, I am a sucker for the Samsung slightly rounded TV.
And other than just looking different than every other TV, why do we care that it's like slightly rounded?
Just because it's like the rose gold iPhone that I don't own, by the way. All right, so let's talk
about televisions for a second, because for our little narrative about, you know, the evolution of television from the broadcast cable world to the whatever the hell we're going into, one of the interesting things right now is there hasn't been a coalescing of television operating systems. Remember, television today is like an iMac. It's a computer, wimpy as it is, connected to a display, and any TV more than a couple $100 is quite a smart TV with apps. But every goddamn platform is different, and that has some significant effects on the market. Loosely speaking, it's good for Netflix and HBO, and bad for all the startups in the world, because if you only the very biggest video companies are going to be able to make apps that go on all these crazy different platforms. So I would argue that the TV world should get taken over by a monopolist like Microsoft, and it's too bad that it hasn't.
So I have a Samsung Smart TV.
Right.
And let me say this in the most politically appropriate way possible. Not so smart.
Right. Because there isn't an ecosystem behind it of any size.
Well, but also because they're a manufacturer, like software, not exactly their thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've been saying, I mean, for more than a decade, we are going to be a software company, and they keep hiring people, but unless you're Apple, and Apple is essentially, a highly improbable thing, you can't build an ecosystem around one manufacturer's products. And so we have, Apple is a little bit of a beneficiary because your TV doesn't actually connect to stuff. So you might buy an Apple TV or a Chromecast, even though you'd rather not. But until something coalesces, and Google should have owned this market and hasn't been able to. Roku has done a better job than anybody else in getting a bunch of TV manufacturers, but unless something else happens, we have a problem.
So let's skip past screens because we agree they're boring.
Okay.
Right?
What's interesting? Screens and glasses.
So VR AR is going to be a transformative year, and maybe not in a good way. So last year, for those of you who follow me on Forbes and wherever, last year I went out there and said, this is going to be the year of VR. It's going to launch at CES. It's going to be big, and it's going to basically be Christmas 2016 is going to be the year of VR. And it kind of went, blah. Some stuff sold, but nothing big. HTC Vive didn't sell big. Oculus didn't sell much at all. I actually went to Best Buy, and there was an Oculus demo set up, and it was so underwhelming. So the question is, will it be a year late, and will this be the big year, or not? Or
well,
is
no,
it?
let me just ask you a question, right? So, you went and bought a 3D television, which is another way of having this, a similar experience, right? 3 dimensions through stereo glasses. It doesn't have quite the same interfaces that the new thingies have, but there's never been a bigger flop in the consumer electronics business, right? So, do you think that might have some correlation to the potential market for standalone 3D glasses?
The thing about 3D about VR, they're not standalone 3D glasses. The thing about VR is when you actually get inside and in it, like an HTC Vive setup, it is uber cool. It is, you want to have one in your living room. It's just that when you do the math and go 600, 700 computer, it's not a $1,800 investment. Like there's just a gap between living room entertainment pricing and where VR is today. Now,
so I'm going to disagree with that because we've seen lots of things. The typical CES thing is something gets introduced, it's really expensive. Everybody wants one, only rich people have them, and over X number of years, and our friend Moore's Law, the price goes down and down and down, right? We saw that with, at least to some degree, with video recorders, DVRs, and lots of other things. I think the issue with virtual reality, which is really 3D plus an interface plus software, right, is the software side, is the programming. It's, I've said this before, I think that the first demo, you say, oh my God, somebody could make something really cool with this. Drool, drool, drool. Then you say, what cool things have people made with it? And there isn't a very long list. There's some cool, Media Lab demos that show things you could do in a couple dimensions. But it's not like you're going over to your rich neighbor's house, and they're doing something all the time that you want to do. Right? So something else needs to be invented.
I'm going to go back to CES because I'm in cool mode. I'm in Vegas is going to be cool mode, and then we can get back to it wasn't cool in a couple of weeks. Let's talk about drones.
Okay.
So,
Drones have a huge lots of people have drones. They're doing really creepy things with them, and they're going to knock down jetliners, but they've caught on. You buy them at Radio Shack, you fly your cell phone around, and you look in your neighbor's window.
All right. So,
what's the next step with drones?
All right.
What are you looking for as the
So last year there were two big players at CES.
Right.
DJI is the far and away Chinese company leading the pack. Great technology, prices coming down. Parrot is right behind them. It's a French company. Amazing devices. They're getting smarter. They're getting smaller. They're getting cheaper. They're getting more agile. They're easier to program. You're seeing more. It's now not uncommon to see evening newscasts or bloggers or vloggers that routinely use drone videography in their production. Those sweeping shots from up in the sky that come zooming down to the anchor are no longer unusual. They're now standard fare. But I think this is the year that you see kind of an explosion in, Amazon's promised drone delivery, drones in industry, drones in surveillance, drones in policing, drones in military. This is the year of the drone.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is the decade of the drone because we can, again, it's the opposite of VR. We can think of stuff that we really could do with it that doesn't have this big gap, right? Now, let me ask you a question about that. You're talking about sweeping shots, right? So one of the most expensive, complicated things if you're doing video production is putting your camera on tracks so that they can swoop all around or on cranes. Is the damn thing steady enough that I can just go stick it in my studio and have it swoosh around my anchor or my cast and get a bunch of different shots and replace all those cranes?
That's where it's going. Then you also have to have the camera that's mounted on that drone be recording images with lens quality and lighting quality. And I mean, it's not, you're not going to see a light switch where all of the big movie gear is going to go away. It's still a novelty shot at this point. Right,
but we can make a pretty damn good camera that's small and light.
Yes.
And so I haven't looked into this. I mean, do you what is the world waiting for? I mean, the super introduction, when you go to the Parrot or that Chinese company's press conference and they say, our beautiful new model number 1732 drone that does this that everyone's been waiting for, what's it going to do that last year's model didn't quite do right?
Well, interesting. Notice the name that we left off the conversation.
Yes.
GoPro.
Okay.
I mean, they were all
they make drones? They make cameras, right?
But they have been the eyes of most of these drone devices. And now you're seeing them they're making a drone of their own. Drone of their own is a good phrase. I like that. In any case, we're gonna watch for drones at CES, and we'll have, I'm sure.
Is GoPro? That's the Google one, right? Or is that?
No, GoPro is GoPro. It's a public company. Their stock is in the toilet.
Google bought the other one and then destroyed it.
But let's get to the category of our last category, and the one where I think you and I can agree passionately, which is voice control. Alexa versus Siri versus everybody else.
I'm going to say, I think this is this is what we get. We have, so when you said that the Siri or the Alexa that is a good 2 rooms away said, I can't find the answer to that question. Oh, now it's reading me the movies.
That's funny.
This is the life we're in, where people are having conversations with robots are having conversations. Alexa, stop! That Amazon thing, yes, whose name cannot be spoken, is constantly saying what she doesn't know the answer to in our household. But what do you think is going to be exciting about this in the next year?
Well, let's start with, I had no idea that it was going to evolve this fast. I mean, you have woman whose name we're not going to mention in your living room. I have one in my living room. You know, I will say we haven't added software as quickly as I thought we would have, and but neither here nor there. I think Apple needs to step up and needs to move quickly, or Siri is going to be lost in the dust. I think I tried to demo the Google Home device also at Best Buy over the holidays, and the guy who was demoing it couldn't make it work. I think Amazon has a running head start here.
We find that we end up having to go back and forth between all three when, my girls and I, who are very curious with eccentric interests, are sitting there at the dinner table and we want to say, who, what is the something or another. And, you keep rephrasing it. And if who doesn't get it, you do okay, Google, or hey, female from Apple.
So you use all three?
Yeah, because the Google one is much better at like information queries than the other two combined. But
yeah, by the way, you just won your geek badge for this episode of Hacking TV.
But I want to say for our core audience, I think that voice and video is a huge opportunity, right? Since, the launch of television, people have been shouting back at the television, give him the hook, whatever it is. You're talking to your TV because your TV's talking to you. If we can figure out the right programming and to let you talk to the TV and have the TV do the smart thing, like you're watching sports and you say, show me the replay of the touchdown. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can say that are predictable that a smart television experience should be able to do. And, you're watching the news and what does that mean? Or who is that? Or any of a number of things. I think that people who are on top of it can make television a lot better if they link it to voice.
Agree, and it's a perfect transition to our next brief category, which is what's going on with Twitter. And
wake me up after the segment. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll speak and you just nap. I think Twitter was all but dead. I think that history will write that Donald Trump brought it back from the edge of the universe, and now Twitter is saying it's a media company, and as a media company, they're doing a lot of stuff in video. I'm finding Twitter is increasingly more relevant in my daily life than it was not very long ago. I don't know what Facebook doesn't want to be a media company, but Twitter does. What does that mean?
Well, Twitter's desperate, and Facebook has a real business. And the media company is such the wrong word. There is, Facebook is a media distribution company. It's not a publisher, a media creation company. Twitter is a very important media distribution company, and it's diddling around with whether it should also be a producer or not. If you look at Snapchat, which is just incredibly successful, they've got maybe a plausible business model of taking two entirely unrelated things and putting them next to each other, right? You have a personal communication system, and then you swipe left and you can get a video clip network. And the first one is big enough that the second one isn't crazy, and it will last long enough to have them make $1 zillion in the IPO, sell out in the lockup, and then it will collapse. But or not.
Was that an actual stock prediction? Because we should warn our listeners and viewers that Saul is not authorized to make actual stock predictions.
Well, thankfully, I am not a shareholder in any of the. Look, if I had been a shareholder in Snapchat, I would make a lot of money. So unfortunately, I've been wrong. Well, go back and look at the story I wrote about Yahoo about a year after its IPO. So we're in 1997. Ridiculing how valuable it was at being $500 million in market cap. And it shoots up to $150 billion. And then you could say 20 years later, I'm right, but I wasn't right.
You could have been wealthy and right.
There's a long list of, we won't go there.
All right. So let's leave Twitter. We'll I also want to mention Twitter's talking about doing this live 360 video thing. That's actually interesting, but we'll. Well,
I mean, let me just say again. So you've got, what's the great thing about Twitter? Why does Donald Trump like it? Anybody can publish to anybody, and both producing and consuming is the lowest possible effort. So you can do it in high volume. You distill your thing down into this a haiku, and then lots of people can read it, and it's just text, and it can go onto any device, and it has the least friction of anything. That's why anyone's talking about Twitter. Video is the opposite. It's expensive to make. It's asymmetrical. The people who make it in any quantity are not the people who produce it or who consume it. Video is a completely different thing than what made Twitter. Twitter. That doesn't mean they can't do it, but it's not smooth. Right. So, end of Twitter rant number 5017.
So now let's talk about the Chinese.
Okay.
So China Central Television is launching a new global media platform on New Year's Day, so that's now launched, to help, quote, rebrand China overseas. We're not sure what this means exactly, are we?
So how would you rebrand China? You aren't hungry after an hour? What do they need, other than we make everything in the world you possibly want?
Well, I mean, presumably this has been in the works for more than the last 4 months, but our now president-elect seems more than willing to make China the butt of every joke that he can come up with. So they're trying to figure out a way, among other things, to, it's a big country. They're doing lots of things. They have history. They have manufacturing. They have, presumably they're not telling negative China stories, right? So, but you and I both realized as we were getting ready for this podcast, we're not sure how we would see this new global network.
Well, I mean, you look at RT. I'm not sure if I were somebody who ran a dictatorial large country, I would say RT is a great success. But they've gotten distribution. They're on the web. They're on some cable and satellite systems.
For those of you playing along at home, RT is Russian television.
Right. They periodically hire, over-the-hill American broadcasters. And I think Larry King is on RT, for example, for the people who, have aged out of network television. And, if it had worked so well, Putin wouldn't have to hack into, the elections in order to influence this country. So, but, China is one-upping them. They're doing 6 simultaneous channels. Since they make all the television sets in the world, maybe the next TV that you buy that's branded RCA, which is made in China, or even Samsung, which is probably made in China, will just automatically switch to what's the new thing? China Global Television Network mode.
So meanwhile, another bit of China news, and then we'll get to our last little Norwegian kicker. Baidu is planning a $1 billion IPO for their video streaming site that we can't pronounce.
Right. IQIYI.
IQIYI.
Yes.
So
exactly.
So someone in China said, "Oh my God, we can get a 5-letter domain. We should buy that right away."
And it's a video sharing site, and since they block all the American sites and there's 1 billion people there, guess what? People like to share video, and they can put ads on them and make a lot of money. So they do an IPO.
An IPO in what market?
I don't know. They probably, they'll sell it to anybody who'll give them cash.
All right. So we'll as soon as we can pronounce the IQIYI.com site, we'll talk more about it. Which brings us to our last topic of this episode, and kind of an interesting one. The big hit out of Norway that seems to be making its way to the U.S. Scam. SKAM, but That is Scam, right?
Starring live from his jail cell, Bernie Madoff? No.
It's a Norwegian teen show. Here's the New York Times article about it. It was a hit in Norway, and what makes it interesting is that it's a television show that also has a web distribution strategy hardwired into it.
So what they do is, instead of just having an episode every week, they divide up the happenings of the characters into little episodes, and they time them. So if the kids are going out on Friday night they do a little video thing, and they all post to their Instagram feed. And so the narrative is happening in pretend real time, and you follow all of the different events as it's happening through the week, and then they replay it all and repackage it into a half an hour TV show, so you don't have to go spend your entire life following them.
So two important things about Scam. One is this is not light. So the way the Times reports it, they say follow a group of Oslo teenagers as they navigate sex, school, drinking, depression, rape, religion, coming out, and the pains of status anxiety. So, not a lighthearted show. And then the guy who's bringing it to the U.S. is Simon Fuller, who did American Idol. So, I mean, American Idol was no slouch when it came to actually, making noise in the U.S. And it seems like now the question is, where will it play in the U.S. and will any teens will they watch it all online but not watch it, when it moves to television?
The problem is, I think it's a very nice format for, a contemporary character drama, right? Or sitcom or drama. And it's a logical way of doing things. The problem is, if you start with the technology as opposed to the story, you could easily do something lame. If you had a really, really good story with good characters, that's a fun way of watching something, right? I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. People are talking about this shit. Or, imagine like Survivor, or what was the one that J.J. Abrams did about the airplane crash that everyone was talking about 10 years ago?
Lost.
So imagine, somehow you're doing Lost, but you get real-time updates every time somebody wanders off and meets a swamp monster or whatever it is. Keeps people involved. I think that's if you can do the work, if you can afford the writers, it's a good way of telling stories.
So we've got about a minute left. Let's wrap up by talking about CES. So is there going to be some, the one thing at CES is that a lot of people are doing Kickstarter campaigns, bringing products to CES and then trying to get them to be either matched up with a manufacturer or trying to get the buzz out of CES. So it's possible that there could be some non-mainstream devices or phenomenon that break out.
It's possible. People pick different PR strategies. If I had a company that had just emerged from my Kickstarter or my Y Combinator with some great piece of hardware, I probably wouldn't launch it at CES because there's so much noise. I mean, while there's some of everything, there's a lot of everything. The big companies sort of have their rhythms around it, and so it's what does Samsung and Sony, if anybody remembers them, and so on, have to say.
And amazing to me after all these years that Apple has never chosen to do anything.
It hurts them so much. I don't know why. Nobody really pays any attention when they announce products, but if they were at this great big show with all those people, maybe they could get some attention.
Okay, for those of you playing along at home, that was sarcasm. Yeah, you're fair enough. In fact, was it a couple of years ago that they actually stepped on CES and announced their big play 2 days before CES and essentially sucked up all the news cycles for the week?
Yeah. And, I mean, we could go back and say, what were we talking about a year ago from CES? Alexa, right? Sorry, I'm not talking about you. That Amazon thing was not announced at CES. They may or may not have a booth. She can't find any recently added songs in my music library, and she can't find any references to herself at CES. So it's not like the big consumer electronics stories are, necessarily announced at CES.
And with that, we are out of time. Have a fabulous first week of 2017, and
all of you. Next week, we'll just bring Alexa right into the room here, and she will co-host with us. She clearly wants to get on the show.
Have a good week.
Have a good week. Keep on hacking.
Keep on hacking.